Welcome to the Traitors, a Traitors podcast. My name is David Bloomberg, and I'm your host for the first half of Season 3 of the Traitors US. Today, I'm once again talking with some guy named Matthew Keeley as we discuss Episode 6, and we have quite a lot to talk about.
Yes, we do. Hi, everybody. I'm sure you know me by now, and I don't know if I need to introduce myself. I'm Matthew. I'm a writer. I'm a Traitor superfan. I work in TV. I'm back. And yes, as soon as we came on the call, I said, David, there's a lot to talk about today. This was quite
Yes.
quite an episode.
Yes. And I say that I am the host of the first half of Season 3. That just means that as of next week, we'll be flipping roles, and Matthew will be the host, and I will be the co host.
Yeah,
So, really, there's not much difference, except he does the introduction.
yeah, pretty
Uh,
much.
for those of you who don't know me, I've been covering reality TV for over 24 years, everywhere, online, in print, you name it, on podcasts. And I also, of course, post videos on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram as at David Bloomberg TV. And pretty much will talk to anyone who will listen, and some people who really don't want to listen.
Yes. And from the nice people later on this episode, we've got some listener questions that we're going to address.
Okay. All right. Well, before we jump into this very busy episode, let's set up the Traitor game. Of course, regular listeners know that Matthew and I will each lie to each other once during the podcast. The lie can be big or small, about the traitors, ourselves, or anything else, as long as it is a complete fabrication. However, we are looking for fake facts, not fake opinions. Like, I can't say, I love how Wes plays reality TV games, but I can say Wes is a very tactful person. At the end of the episode, we'll then put our traitor hunting skills to the test and see if we can detect the other person's lie. Matthew, are you ready to betray me?
Yes, and I'm determined to catch you out this time once and for all.
All right, well, good luck. In that case, our game begins now. We begin episode 6 in the Traitor's Turret after last week ended on Carolyn talking about wanting to murder her fellow traitors. And she comes right out to spill the beans about having heard that Danielle wanted her out. Danielle denies it a bit and tries to make some stupid excuse about Carolyn not telling her about Jeremy, but it's not flying. Carolyn also thinks Rob wants her out, and he denies it. For a change, he's actually telling the truth. But she's so mad, she says, "There's nobody I want to murder other than you two right now."
I have so many thoughts already. I mean, I watched the episode and sort of all my notes are kind of like stream of consciousness. So you'll get what I was thinking as I was watching and then my reflections at the end.
Right.
But even as I was watching this, first I didn't know how the episode was going to end, didn't know what the round table was going to be like. My instincts here were that Carolyn was probably doing the wrong thing. Like, I don't know. I just sort of wondered, should she have just held it together? Like, be mad at Danielle and decide that you hate her and you're gonna go after her, but does this just screw everything up? Like, maybe you just put on a brave face, smile, act like everything's fine, and surreptitiously mess with her later? Like, is Carolyn kind of ruined things a bit?
I don't know, but that's also not Carolyn. I mean, Carolyn is going to be who Carolyn is.
Yeah.
And her holding thing, I mean, she has held so much in this whole time. She
Hmm.
has kowtowed to them. She has let them steamroll her at times. And I think it just got to be too much and she couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah, especially in terms of murders. Like every time they discuss
Right.
murder, they just seem to completely ignore her. So that's just
Yes.
it's just one extra thing.
Right. So Danielle says they're like a family, and both of the other two are like, "Oh yeah, a very dysfunctional family," which I believe is where we get the title for the episode. Um, and she says they can start from the beginning, and they'll have each other's back. She'll make it right tomorrow. And all I can think of is, sure, Danielle. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, right. So they move on to the actual murder they can commit. Wes's name is brought up because he's dangerous, but Danielle says if they get rid of him, it'll point back to Rob. But then Rob brings up Bob H. Because he's on to Rob and a more imminent threat. And I'm thinking, well, won't he point right back to Rob too?
Yeah.
Danielle doesn't want to just because she likes him, which is a terrible reason to make that decision.
I know, I know. She was just like, oh, but I like him. Like,
Yeah.
hello, that's not the game.
She brings up Ivar, and Rob agrees because he's an obvious faithful. So those are our three options heading to breakfast. But first, Rob offers a hug to Carolyn, and she accepts. And then she gets one from Danielle, too, as Carolyn notes, we're the gamers, you know.
Yeah. I also, I mean, I'm going to sort of get very pedantic and geeky here. There's this exterior shot of the room from outside the castle. They must have used like a drone to film it or something. And
Mm-hmm.
so we're outside and we see in the window and we see the three figures with their cloaks on, and it really threw me because I thought, oh, that looks really realistic. Like it wasn't CGI, I don't
Mm-hmm.
think. But I don't think they really filmed that in an actual turret in the castle. So it just this, maybe they've done this before and I've never noticed it, but it just this moment, I thought they've gone to the effort of faking, like using whatever room is at the top of this castle and putting three people in cloaks and faking it. I don't know. It just,
I mean, it could be that they. I feel like, and I don't know this for sure. The Circle. Have you watched The Circle?
yeah, yeah,
There are scenes in The Circle that are allegedly filmed from outside, looking into the
yeah,
building,
yeah,
and it shows the players sitting there. And I think a lot of that time it's like green screened in.
yeah.
And so I suspect that's the case here.
Yeah,
Like they
maybe
green
it
screened the
was.
window.
And maybe it was just really effective and I
Right.
fell for it. I was like, wow. Uh, yeah, I just wanted to point it out in case anyone else
Yeah.
noticed it.
Okay. All right. Well, after that, we head to breakfast. Sierra, Dolores, and Carolyn come in first. Dolores tells us she'll have survivor guilt if Danielle is murdered after giving her the shield. Dolores, don't worry, you'll be fine. Um, Sierra even brings up the possibility that Danielle is a traitor, but she can't really get into it before the next group walks in with Brittany, Derek, and Gabby.
Yeah.
Now, Derek brings up the question of wouldn't a traitor take out Rob for his big move? And Sierra says Rob could be a traitor who went after Bob the drag queen as a way of putting his dick on the table. And she doesn't mean the British dessert spotted dick. Um, she she acts like this is some new idea, but it was literally discussed, except for the dick part, at the last round table.
Yeah.
But she's acting like she just came to this revelation. Wow, wouldn't it be great if he did that? Were you paying attention last night? Did you forget all about that?
Yeah.
And Derek tells us people are starting to question Rob and if he is a traitor or if he is a faithful, any traitor would murder him.
I was also confused about why Derek was so focused on it today rather than yesterday, because nothing's changed except, especially when Rob, I'm jumping ahead, but when Rob then does walk in
Mm-hmm.
and Derek's like, that's it, it's him. I didn't really understand why he was so much more convinced by it than he was yesterday, other than the fact that it's a second day that Rob appears. So everything that Derek was saying, I thought, why didn't you say this yesterday?
I think he's slowly building, which
Yeah,
is actually good. I mean, Derek is a smart Big Brother player, and he's, I think, shown himself to be a pretty smart traders player too.
yeah,
And I think he knows you can't just dump it all on people. You have to slowly plant the seeds, especially for someone like Rob, who has so many people loyal to him already. You're just going to have to kind of let it bubble up. And so he was setting the scene, fully expecting that Rob would walk in again and he'd be like, see, there you go. There's no
yeah,
reason that he should still be here.
yeah,
And he's right. I mean, there's one reason. The one reason that he should still be here is so that the traders, if he wasn't one, could distract.
yeah, yeah.
But I'd still get rid of him. Sam, Sandoval, Rob, Dylan, and Chriselle arrive. Derek says it like it is to us. Sure enough, Rob walks in. He should not have walked in, not if he was a faithful. Derek notes that Ivar could be in trouble, but Brittany wonders if they'd even notice him being gone. It's just one less person to make tea. So it's good that the cliche Brit on the show is good for something.
That's what I'm drinking.
Uh, no root beer this time.
No root beer today, actually. I've gone with tea,
Let's
genuinely.
see it. Let's see if I believe you here.
It's
Don't spill it.
it's
Okay.
look, it's
Yeah.
tea.
Okay. Okay. All right. I've got chocolate, so and I disappeared when I. It's invisible chocolate. Danielle, Wes, and Ivar arrive. So Bob H is gone, and I guess Danielle's personal feelings didn't get in the way after all. Flashback to the turret. And another thing Rob is worried about is that if Wes is gone, people will figure either Rob or Derek is a traitor, since they already determined, I guess, that it was one of the three. And it's a good point. As I'm watching this, I suspect it won't matter. Turns
Yeah.
out I'll be wrong.
I would like to take this opportunity to say I predicted Bob H would be the murder victim, so I'm very
Oh,
smug and pleased with myself.
okay. Okay. You after your other prediction was that Rob would be banished.
Yes, I did.
And after you made that prediction, I have been literally thinking like it hasn't been a week since we recorded, but all week since then, I've been like, oh, I bet he's right. I bet he's right. And
But
through like 90% of this episode, I still thought you were right.
yeah,
So, um, Bob, when he gets his letter, is angry and thinks the traitors are playing a ballsy game. I think they're mostly playing a bad game. So, I do want to note, I pointed this out before, but we have said goodbye to Bob, and Robin. So, Rob is the last of that group there.
yeah, yeah, it's not looking good for him based
No.
on that alone.
Yeah. Danielle is still sad about the murder, but she tells us the way to make sure you're safe with Rob is to let him have the power. And that's true, but it can't go on forever.
Yeah.
She says he ruined everything, but I'm thinking she's done plenty of ruining herself.
Yeah, and I maybe I should come back to it later. Maybe I'll just mention it now. I'm surprised that you kind of mentioned it at breakfast that I think Dolores was worried that see all these names that start with a D. I
Mm-hmm.
think Dolores was worried that Danielle wasn't going to come back, so she obviously thinks Danielle's is a faithful. I'm surprised that more hasn't been made out of what Danielle did in the mission yesterday with the not going
Oh,
for the
yeah.
shields twice. It just seems to have passed everyone by, or
If I had to guess, well, okay. I was going to say you could kind of see my gears processing there as I just froze. Um, I was going to say I bet it's been discussed, but we often see this on the traders where when it's that person is not going to seriously be in the mix, they
yeah,
just don't show us that, and then it
sure,
pops up again the next episode. The one thing I would say that doesn't conform to that was the four of them in the car, where we'll talk about it later, the whole girls stick together conversation. But then again, Danielle was in that car too, so it's not like they're going to talk about it in front of her.
yeah, yeah,
So I think it's just one of these things that sinks down for an episode and then maybe comes back up.
yeah. We'll see, we'll see.
Alan comes in and hints at the mission being about blowing things up. I also, was a bit surprised that he didn't, when he threw Bob's picture on the floor, he didn't say, "Bob, you are the biggest loser." And
Oh, what a missed opportunity.
I'm going to have to write Alan's lines this year, I tell you. Anyway, the mission hint about blowing things up, I immediately suspect it's the one from the Traitors UK, where they have to blow up a giant traitor.
Yeah.
After Alan leaves, some of the players express surprise that Rob is still there, while Sandoval is shocked that he's still there himself. But Gabby just bluntly points out he's too chaotic for the traders to get rid of, and nobody listens to him anyway.
Yeah. He's
Um,
he's I don't know if I've said this on the podcast before. He reminds me so much of Johnny Depp, like just sort of a bit manic, kind of looks quite like him. Yeah, just a bit of a strange lone wolf. Yeah.
yeah, and continuing in that vein, after breakfast, he pulls Brittany aside and says his theory is Dolores. Brittany tells him it's not, and they act like children as she's just as he keeps saying stop, 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 while she's going, it's not, it's not, it's not. Um, she tells us she has a headache from him. He's on theory number 73, and it's not even 9 a.m. Dolores tells Rob and Ivar that she's at a loss. Rob says it must be someone who can get people to listen to them. Hmm. Who could it be that could get people to listen to him? I wonder. Um, he says Wes, especially since Wes was so sure it was Nikki. Rob tells us he wants Wes banished, which seems rather contradictory to the position he took in the turret when he said it would point the finger more at him.
Yeah.
So it's like overnight he's had this revelation that he wants to get rid of Wes.
Mm.
Sandoval keeps pushing the Dolores narrative to Derek and Wes. They seem to ignore him and talk separately about pulling the trigger on Rob. Derek notes that if he's a traitor, the two of them are home free. Brittany tells Carolyn she heard Carolyn said her name. Carolyn almost does a full-on spit take and then swears on everything that it's not true. Brittany won't name who said it, but it's pretty obvious.
Yes.
Carolyn notes that today was supposed to be Danielle earning her trust back, and now this. Now, to be fair, Danielle said it yesterday.
Yeah.
And there hasn't exactly been time for her to correct anything.
Yeah.
But also, I'm not entirely sure how she would have corrected it anyway, or frankly, that she'd want to. Anyway, Carolyn tells Brittany that she's her number one. And with this, we head off to the mission. And yes, I was right in my guess. It is indeed the one where players have to answer number-based questions to gather gunpowder. At least I was mostly right, as this one's a little different. There are 20 locked wooden crates. 17 of them have gunpowder. The other 3 have shields. If they get enough gunpowder in half an hour to blow up the traitor, they win $30,000. And the 3 shields are available to be taken by anyone. So the difference is, of course, in the UK, they had to make a choice, carry gold or carry gunpowder. That just isn't even an issue this time.
Yeah. And I'm going to repeat myself. I said this on the UK season. I think as soon as you see that giant traitor and there's gunpowder involved, there's no way they're failing this mission. Like, they have not spent all that money just to not blow up giant traitor. So, they failed the mission with the clowns and the
Yeah.
levels. That's not much of a big spectacle. They can afford to fail that one. If there's fire involved and pyrotechnics, they're doing whatever they can to help these people make a big spectacle. So
Yes.
you kind of know what's gonna happen.
Yes. Chriselle tells us what we, of course, already know, that a shield is more important than money because money doesn't mean anything if you're not there to enjoy it.
Yes.
Now, if you had asked me to take a bet on which player would say that, I'm almost making Matthew do a spit take here. She would have been nearly my last pick, in part because I keep forgetting she's there. Not as bad as Sam, but I keep forgetting she's there. But also, she just hasn't said anything strategic that I recall.
No, and I'm going to come back to Chriselle at Roundtable because she keeps saying things at the Roundtable that I think are such bad play. She seems like a lovely lady, but geez, she keeps doing dumb things in the game. So
this is her one shining
this
moment.
is her one thing that I thought, oh,
Yeah.
you do get it.
Yeah. All 3 groups that after they split up go directly for the shield crates. One crate is across a river, and Rob slips in the river and dunks himself, which is funny and made funnier by the fact that it wasn't even the right crate. So they did that for nothing.
Yeah.
In another group, Sandoval, Danielle, Gabby, Ivar, and Carolyn open the shield crate, and Carolyn just reaches in and picks it up. Sandoval is just standing there. He's taken aback, and a couple others say, "Oh, well, we thought we were going to talk about it." And he tells us he doesn't think she needs it anyway. He's right, just not for the reason he believes.
Yeah.
Danielle says it's okay if they don't tell anyone who has it. The shield effectively protects all of them. Yeah, sure, Danielle.
Well, yeah. But again, at that moment, I thought, oh, she actually said, if she was really a faithful, I thought, oh, actually, yes, that's a good point for someone to raise for the group. Well done.
Yeah.
So I have to give her credit for pretending to be a faithful quite well and thinking of a good strategy.
Yeah. Now, another group opens a shield crate and they agree to rock, paper, scissors for it. Dylan tells us he's oddly good at it and even won a 100-person tournament for it. This time he wins about a 4-person tournament and gets the shield. In Derek's group, he asks for it, but Chriselle wants it too. Derek is not as good at rock, paper, scissors, and she wins it. Derek is annoyed because he doesn't think she's in any danger to begin with. 15 minutes have gone by, and not a single drop of gunpowder has made it back. But now they begin. And let me tell you, these numeric questions are super easy. Like, how many players are left in the game?
Yeah.
And how many letters are in Alan's surname? Alan seems annoyed that the players are running behind, as if we don't know that they'll get it done
It
in the
doesn't
last
matter.
seconds. Yeah.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Carolyn is talking to Gabby about how someone is spreading her name. Gabby tells her it's Danielle, as if Carolyn didn't already know. She tells us she can't play with someone who is continuously throwing her name out. Again, to be fair to Danielle, that was yesterday and all part of a single blitz, not ongoing today, too. But I don't really think that's of great comfort to Carolyn.
Yeah. And I guess maybe she didn't realize the extent of it.
Right,
So she's mad
right,
that, oh, I knew it was, yeah, I didn't realize it was
yeah,
this bad. So,
right,
oh, this is
right,
even worse. She didn't even tell me all these other things she'd said to people.
right. They finally get a difficult math question asking how many remaining players are over 6 feet tall, and that group
Mm,
gets it wrong.
yeah.
Anyway, we're down to 20 seconds remaining, and then 10, 9, 8. You know the drill. Alan pushes the plunger, and the gunpowder explodes, bringing down the giant traitor. I am so surprised that they got it at the end.
Yeah. I also wondered if, I mean, it's quite impressive. It does look really cool. It's this huge explosion.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like we're on a movie set or something. I did wonder how much of it was sort of fake cut between their reactions. Like, did they see a slightly smaller explosion? Are the big, huge fireballs we're seeing maybe shot at a different time? Maybe
Hmm.
I'm being skeptical. I'm ruining the illusion. I'm sorry.
How could you? It's like when people in monster movies, the CGI is added later, so they just have to look at like a guy's hand or a stick or something. Go
Yeah,
ah, you
yeah.
know. Well, in the car ride back, Carolyn, Danielle, Sierra, and Dolores are in that car together. I mentioned it earlier. Carolyn asks if the girls are sticking together. They all agree. So Carolyn guesses they'll just wait and see what happens at round table. And I think it's Dolores who says she'll see what Rob has to say. Carolyn tells us she's just tired of Danielle and she'd rather spend her time trying to get Danielle out because she can't even pretend to be nice. Which, by the way, is one of my Survivor and Big Brother rules, which Carolyn certainly knows. In fact, that rule even has Boston Rob as the featured character on the poster for it. Though, in looking at this, I just noticed that his hat is facing forward in it. That surprised me. And
That's not
now
right.
I'm wondering, when did he start wearing his hat backward? Or did the artist get it wrong? I don't remember.
Um, at this point as well, when Carolyn is saying this, again, my stream of consciousness at the time was I'm worried she's gonna basically do a Boston Rob. She's gonna go so hard for Danielle.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna look so obvious and awkward and over the top. So I just I was every time she talked about, man, I'm going for her tonight. That's it. I've had enough. I just thought, oh, this could go really badly for you. And I reckon, and I get you're saying, look, this is just Carolyn. This is what she's like.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think she ought to just let if she must be able to hear people talking about Rob. So let them take care of Rob. Worry about Danielle next time, maybe. I just could see the chaos coming
Yeah.
already.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's dinner time back at the castle. Sam is happy everything is healthy. And Brittany tells him to get some joy in his life, like eat a brownie. And he says he hates brownies because there's too much chocolate. And I'm like,
What? I
yeah,
know.
I don't understand that concept. And Sam, go back to being invisible because you were better that way.
Yeah, too healthy. Just I can't relate at all.
Yeah. Um, Wes tells Dolores about Sandoval's random theory about her. She says she'll address it at the round table. Derek starts spreading around to a few people that he's going after Rob. There's a funny scene of him telling Ivar he's following up on something Ivar said last night. And Ivar, like, sits there,
He's
can't
like,
remember
what
what
did I
he's
say?
talking about. Yeah. So he eventually catches on. Ah, those inbreeding royals. Um,
Yeah, he's
um,
truly like confused, and
yeah,
even when he kind of remembers, he's just like, it's as if he suddenly doesn't think it's important anymore. He's like, oh
yeah.
yeah, I guess we did talk about that. Yeah, sure.
I swear, some of these people have like a memory wipe when they go to bed at night. You
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
Um, Meanwhile, Rob tells Sandoval and Gabby that Wes is putting a lot of people's names out there. Elsewhere, Carolyn talks to Dolores and Dylan about Danielle. And Wes talks to Brittany and Sam about how Sam had said it would be suspicious if Rob survived the night. Derek will present most of it at the round table, but Wes will add on. But Brittany feels Wes is more suspicious because he's puppeteering. She checks in with Derek, but he lies to her because she feels like she could be a fellow traitor with Rob, and she's protecting him. She's been very quiet at the round tables, which is suspicious. And then Derek brings up Rob to Danielle. So he has the wrong fellow Big Brother player as the traitor. But of course, Danielle tells us she's happy to jump on that horse.
Yeah.
Chriselle tells Rob she keeps hearing his name along with Wes's as Danielle sits and listens. Chriselle doesn't like the way Wes has spoken to her, though she acknowledges that doesn't mean he's a traitor. Then Chriselle gets up and Rob asks Danielle if she thinks it's true. After a pause, she says she's heard everyone saying Wes. Now, I mentioned already that I know I predicted Danielle would go this week and you predicted Rob, but like I said, as they go to the round table, I've just become more and more convinced you were right through the week. And that's what I'm going into this round table thinking.
Yeah, so did I. At this point, I still thought Rob's his time's up. Derek's going to
Mm-hmm.
convince everyone. But even going into the round table, we hear Carolyn still saying she just can't hold it back. She can't hold in what she wants to say to Danielle, and so that did make me think, oh, if she does this, she's really gonna throw a spanner in the works, and
Right.
it's gonna throw everything off. Well,
A little bit
I don't know if
does.
it
Yeah.
changes things, but
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
So Alan comes in and says, "Let justice be done, though the heavens fall," which I found out is a translation of a Latin legal phrase that is supposed to signify the belief that there must be justice no matter the consequences. And, that's a great thing for the host of the show to say, for production to want. But of course, the consequences in question could mean a faithful player getting knocked out of the game later. So it's not a good game strategy.
yeah,
As I often say, don't listen to the host when you're planning your own strategy.
yes,
The prize pot is currently $100,000. In other words, more than the prize for the entire season of the Traitors UK, especially taking into consideration the exchange rate as of yesterday when I looked it up, which was $1 to £0.8. So this amount equates to only a bit more than £80,000.
and we're only
Dolores,
halfway through.
yes, Dolores opens the floor by, or I guess the table, by bringing up Sandoval talking about her. She tells him she doesn't want him to be nervous because she doesn't think anything he says will make sense, so she's okay with it. He tries to say some things, but Derek doesn't want to waste time with it. Before they cut off that line of discussion, though, Dolores quotes Bob and says, "A bad faithful is worse than a traitor, and he's a bad faithful." It's
Yeah,
interesting that she says she's quoting Bob because I remember Sandoval saying this last episode or 2 episodes ago or something.
yeah, I couldn't remember who. I mean, I guess people say it quite often in the
Right.
show, but yeah, I couldn't remember who'd said
Yeah.
it. And this little moment also made me wonder how long was Tom talking that Derek had to be like, "Oh my God, stop! Can we move on?" Like, I mean, to us it looked like 10 seconds. It
Yeah.
did make me wonder, was he just rambling for like 15 minutes or something? And it was. I don't know why Derek had that reaction.
I
So
mean, it's possible, but I think they are all tired of hearing Sandoval talk just in general because they know he's like giving these
so
insane
wrong. Yeah.
theories. And Derek was like, I need to move on to something that's going to matter here.
Yeah.
So, which Derek does. He talks about Rob catching Bob the drag queen and Bob voting for Rob on his way out the door. Plus, Rob is too dangerous to stay, yet here he is, while a person who suggested he's a traitor is gone. Rob says Derek is misguided. First, Bob the drag queen ended his final words by saying everything he said was a lie, which is not what Bob the drag
Yeah,
queen
he didn't
said.
say that exactly.
He said, I will only tell you the truth, except that was a lie. And Rob figured he had a 50% chance of being murdered, him or Ivar, because Ivar is a proven faithful. So how are they both there? He says someone is very, very smart, and they realize it would put a target on Rob. And if the traitors could put a target on him, they don't need to waste a murder on him. Who is smart enough to do that? Who's caused the most chaos? He's heard Danielle, Carolyn, Dolores, and they all came from Wes. And this is about the best defense you can have here. It's exactly what he needed to do, which, of course, we'll find out, which is to say, well, of course I'm here because the traitors want me to look guilty.
Yeah, yeah. He pulled, and he's a good, he's a good sort of public speaker, I guess. Like he's
Mm-hmm.
very convincing. He's very charismatic. He knows how to command the table. So yeah, even at this point, I thought, oh, he's good at this.
Yeah.
So I could see that maybe my prediction was not going to come to fruition.
So Wes provides his own theory, which is pretty much spot on accurate. That Rob and Bob had an alliance as traitors unless one turned on the other. Bob made the comment about one of the three people from the cage being a traitor, which gave Rob the excuse to do it. I don't know that we've ever seen anyone just peg so dead on the
Yeah.
exact reason something happened.
Yeah, I thought so
Uh,
too. It was so specific of him to pick up on the thing, as far as we are concerned, is the
right,
truth, is the reason
right.
that Rob got so annoyed. So yeah, I thought that was very, maybe too clever, and that made
Yeah,
everyone else go, "How did you come up with that specific
right,
thing? That's
right.
suspicious." But yeah, I thought that was impressive for him to piece it all together.
Yeah. Now, Gabby says Wes is always looking for one name and blind loyalty to ensure he's got the numbers to be safe at the round table, which I'm like, well, yeah, that's called playing the game.
Yeah,
Um, Chriselle says he comes across very aggressive when he pressures people to give a name. Wes admits he's aggressive and has been for 20 years. And he's the winningest person at the table. Now, here's the thing he is the winningest person at the table. Challenge seasons also run almost like year round, it seems.
Mhm.
And so, whereas, Rob has been on Survivor 5 times, I believe. Plus the Amazing Race. I forgot to mention that one last time someone pointed out to me.
Yeah,
Plus Deal or No Deal Island and all these other things. That still pales in comparison to the amount of times Wes has been on the challenge.
yeah. Well, I'll say more about Wes when he
Yeah.
gives his big goodbye speech, but
Yeah.
Chriselle, what she just said,
Mm-hmm.
I just this is what I said earlier. This is what I said I was going to come back to. And again, she's obviously not like she's not an idiot, and she's seems very sweet and charming, but she's kind of just making the same mistake that she made last week. So last week they banished Nikki because Chriselle just got bad energy from her.
Mm-hmm.
You would, and then was so upset afterwards. I was like, "Oh God, I made such a stupid mistake." But she's kind of just doing it again by saying, "Oh, I just don't like the way you speak to me. So I think you're a traitor." And so, as someone else even said that, maybe it was Wes, but I thought someone else even said that's not a reason to think he's a traitor.
Well, she did earlier. She said it
Well,
earlier.
there, yeah. So, but
But
she
also,
doesn't stick to that.
right, I do think, and I'll talk about this more later. I think in a game like this, and we've seen it before, getting rid of someone you consider a bad faithful, yeah, so what if he's not a traitor? He's not helping my game. He's being a jerk,
I guess, yeah.
you know. So, um, anyway, he points out you want to know what a bad traitor would do? Run around being aggressive. And he's got a point, unless Wes can't help it. And as an example of Wes not being able to help it, he says he'll dial the aggression back. But the one or two people who vote for him, he's got his eye on them. So literally the same breath as saying he'll dial back the aggression, he makes an aggressive threat, which is not taken well.
Oh, it's just, and considering he, is supposed to be this incredible gameplay, I just thought, you idiot! Like, I think this is the moment that changes the
Mm-hmm.
result. This
Yeah.
is anyone that was on the fence at you could see all the reactions of them, just like. And by the way, I don't think that proves that he's a traitor. Or I mean,
No.
I like to think that if I was there, I would have thought, well, he's just an idiot and he's aggressive. A traitor wouldn't actually say that, but for the majority of the players there, they do just jump on it. They're like, well, thank you, you've just given us a reason to vote for you.
Right. And, as people pointed out, I think on the show and also on social media, it's like if you're a faithful, you don't say, I'm targeting other faithfuls.
Yeah,
You may do it, you may think it, you don't say it.
yeah. And what does it even mean anyway? Like, what's he gonna do? Like,
Right.
banish them?
Yeah.
Turn people against them? I don't know. How much? How?
Which, again, is still a reason for them to turn on him. If he says he's coming for them,
Yeah,
well, then, yeah, I don't care if you're faithful or not. You're coming for me. I got to get rid of you.
yeah. I mean, did he mean that makes me think you're a traitor, and so I'm suspicious of you? Or did he just
Then he
mean I
should have
don't
said
like
that.
you?
Yeah, then he should have said that if that's
Yeah,
what he meant.
yeah.
Um, so Carolyn jumps in to say Wes is being used as a scapegoat, and there are multiple lies going around. She says, "I don't fit in the real world, and I don't fit in this castle. I've always been the quirky one." Luckily, she found an ally in Danielle. Until recently, several people have told her Danielle was saying her name and creating lies and chaos. And she brings up the Brittany situation, and Brittany says, "I never gave you Danielle's name," but Carolyn's like, "Yeah, I knew." Uh, Wes gets accused of causing chaos, but it's Danielle. Now, Danielle denies it and says Carolyn is making it personal, and they go back and forth. Carolyn notes that Jeremy warned her, but she still believed Danielle. Oh, and look, then Jeremy was murdered. By the way, now is as good a time as any. I meant to mention it earlier that if someone is watching and you don't really know much of anything about Carolyn, she was just on an episode of the podcast Pod Friends, which it's on the RHAP network, and it's a guy talking to different people who are friends of the podcast there, and she discussed a lot about her life and various other things. And that's what the podcast is rather than talking about like shows she's been on. I was on that podcast about a year and a half ago myself. If anyone wants to go back and listen. And it's an interesting timestamp in my life because things have changed even since then. I even had an acquaintance just recently who I see them like once or twice a year on holidays, not the British type of holidays, but actual holidays. And he was looking me up for something. He saw something of mine on LinkedIn, apparently. And then he was like, "Oh, I didn't know this about David." And then he found that podcast. And then he called me to tell me he had listened to that podcast and he didn't know any of this stuff about me. And I'm like, okay, that's a little weird, but okay. Um, anyway, sidetrack. But I did want to remember to mention that about Carolyn more than anything. Derek must figure out that once again, time is running short. So he jumps in to say they need to look at objective facts rather than emotions. And they'll look dumb if they vote out West just because he's irritating. With that, the time for talk is over, except not the time for whispering, apparently, because Derek keeps motioning to Rob and mouthing about things he did, while Brittany tells Dylan no about something, which I later realize is, don't vote for Rob.
Yeah,
Uh,
I've never, maybe that does happen a lot, but it doesn't ever seem like that, that
right.
they're so agitated they just couldn't stop talking. I mean, that whole last chunk of roundtable, I thought the vote was coming after Wes said, "I've got my eye on you." I thought Alan was
Mm-hmm.
going to stop them. It's what, and then just all hell broke loose with Carolyn. It was wild
Yeah. And
and great, by the way. Like
yeah.
great, like
Yeah.
brilliant TV. I
Oh,
love
yeah.
this roundtable as a viewer. So exciting.
It is interesting that I feel like it was a few episodes ago where they kept getting agitated at the round table and Alan said, "Silence," or something like that. And he didn't do that this time. So Must have been lower level whispering. So we go to the vote. Dylan votes for Wes. Carolyn votes for Danielle. Wes votes for Rob. Sam votes for Wes. Ivar votes for Wes. Rob votes for Wes. And you can just see Derek sitting there shaking his
Yeah,
head. Dolores votes for Sandoval. Danielle votes for Rob.
for no, like, what a waste of a vote, Dolores.
Yeah. So Danielle did make the decision. Okay, now is my time to jump on and vote for Rob. So she clearly thought it was going in that direction.
Yeah,
Gabby votes for Rob. Derek votes for Rob. Sandoval votes for Rob. Chriselle votes for Wes because this is where it came up. The only person who has the power to threaten like he did is a traitor. And he says he's coming for all five of them
oh
before
yeah.
Brittany turns over her vote and says, make it six. And then Sierra votes for Wes too. So I was just sitting there absolutely shocked that Rob survived this.
Yeah.
But Wes totally shot himself in the foot, which we'll get to more in a moment here. Um, Wes gets up. He says he's one of the greatest reality show competitors of all time, and quantitatively, he's better than everyone there. He says, how you win these shows is you are aggressive and you play hard. And there's his problem.
I'm like, yeah, Wes, it didn't work, did it?
Yeah, yeah. He has this one size fits all approach, no matter what game he's playing. That aggressive attitude may work on the challenge, especially once he had established his reputation years and years ago. This is a completely different game, and he did not adapt to it.
Yeah, this is you say it all the time. It's a social game.
Right.
You have to be liked. You've got to make these people like you. And even if he watched other seasons of the show, I read this is not a spoiler. Generally, if not always, the people who win the traitors are people that the other players like, and they're
Yeah.
you don't. None of the winners, I don't think, are ever unpleasant or aggressive people. They're people who either get lucky or they slide on coast through the show because everyone kind of likes them and they're quite
Right.
quiet. The Traitors isn't won by people who like play hard and or play obviously hard and yeah are
Mm-hmm.
like really confrontational. That doesn't ever really work in this show that
No,
I've seen.
no. So he continues and says, I wanted to come out here and be a traitor because I don't care about any of you. You are all chess pieces on a board. And then he, of course, reveals that he's actually a faithful and adds, fuck all you guys while flipping them off.
This exit. Is he always
Yes.
like this? Is this just him?
Let's discuss that a little bit more at the end.
Okay.
My main answer is I think so, but I'm not sure. But let's get to it. I think it's better to go at the end.
Yeah.
Um,
Like when he arrived on the whatever episode one or two, whatever it
mhm.
was, he was in the kit. My immediate reaction to him was, "Oh, this guy is to be American, a jerk." I was like, "This guy is awful." And then over time, I thought maybe he's not so bad. And then I saw this, and I thought, "No, no, I was right the first time."
So jerk is an Americanism.
Yeah,
What
we
would you
would.
say? A knob end or something like that?
Yeah, like yeah, an idiot, a tool. We wouldn't. Jerk is so American to us. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Um, so after the roundtable, Danielle tells us she had to take the opportunity to go after Rob. And then she also says she can't believe Carolyn would come after another traitor like she did. Okay. Um, she prays for help because Carolyn is driving her crazy. And I'm thinking, well, maybe you shouldn't have set her off then,
Yes,
you know?
that's what I wrote. I wrote it. She's driving me crazy, Danielle. It's your own fault.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, come on. Brittany pulls Derek aside by saying she wants to yell at him. She then calls him a dirty scumbag liar because he said he wouldn't be leading the charge against Rob. He tells her suddenly she and Rob were hanging out a lot, and she even told Dylan not to vote for Rob. She says she doesn't think Rob is a traitor, but he flat out tells her he thinks she is one. Derek then talks to Dylan and passes along that Rob is for sure a traitor and Brittany is too. Brittany walks into the room, glares at Derek, and walks out. Derek predicts he'll get murdered and Rob will claim he's being framed.
Uh, yeah, it's again. I was starting to wonder: is is Derek being why? Like, I don't know the backstory. The way that they interacted, obviously they know each other outside of this and they're
Yes.
close. It sort of reminded me of Trishelle and is it CT
Yes.
from last season? It sort
Hmm.
of reminded me of that kind of best friend-ish relationship. We've been on shows together and we know each other well enough that we can joke around and be
Hmm.
mean. But yeah, so I couldn't read if it was a bad idea of him to just say to her, "I think you might be a traitor." like, how seriously is she going to take that? Is she going to do anything about it?
Oh, glare at him apparently and just not come in the room anymore, you know.
Yeah.
But um so with that, it is time for the Traitors Turret. And as we head there, Danielle knows both Rob and Carolyn are coming for her. Carolyn says it'll be awkward, but she's not holding back. Rob says it's the worst group of traitors he's ever seen and nobody trusts anyone. It's hard to disagree with that.
Yeah.
They walk in and stare at each other for a bit. Eventually, Carolyn says they don't need to lie to each other. It's all out there now, and she guesses they just keep going. Rob thought they had an agreement yesterday to not go after each other, but Carolyn voted for Danielle, and Danielle voted for him. Danielle says her paranoia started when Rob went after Bob. Rob brings up what Bob said, and he didn't have time to discuss it with them earlier. Carolyn says, of course, Danielle is going to go after Rob the same way she planted seeds about Carolyn. And Danielle says she didn't say Carolyn's name today and that it was yesterday. So basically, what I said a couple times earlier. But Carolyn says she knew what she was doing and she was making up lies about her coming after Brittany. Danielle says, well, Carolyn sort of did bring up Brittany's name as a potential murder. Both Carolyn and Rob, let's just say, react negatively to that. And Carolyn sarcastically says, oh, I'll just have to let Brittany know it happened in the turret. Um, and now they know where they stand. She and Rob will have to go after Danielle. Danielle says she'll fight back. And this reminds me of a particular situation that we saw near the end of the Traitors UK that I won't say anything more about because I don't want to spoil anything. But there's a lot of honesty about fighting and fighting back.
Yeah.
Carolyn says it'll be a bunch of lies, but Danielle claims it'll be facts, which Carolyn says you don't have any. Um, it's clear to Carolyn that Danielle wants to get rid of them and become the most faithful, and then no one will suspect her.
Yeah, it's this is wild, and uh, I it's again. I mean, I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to add about the turret, but for the third or fourth time now, this is where the episode ends. There's
Right.
no murder discussion. Like,
Yep.
they are creating enough drama that's the cliffhanger. The cliffhanger is just them
Right.
screaming at each other.
Yeah.
Um, but it when Bob's not Bob, Rob's react Bob and Rob and Robin and
Yeah.
Bobby, it's too much. Rob's reactions to Carolyn and Danielle going at each other were just I was laughing, like it was just hilarious. He just like didn't know what to do with them, and oh, it
Yeah.
was
Someone posted on Blue Sky a picture of him, like that, saying after 20 some years of playing these games, Danielle and Carolyn finally broke
they,
Rob.
yeah. Also, I do want to sort of double back to maybe a small point, but it annoyed me. Rob keeps insisting that he keeps trying to explain why he had to go after Bob the drag queen. He had
Hmm.
no choice, and he's like he says he signed my death warrant because he brought up us three guys that came in,
Hmm.
and I sort of thought, okay, we talked about this last time. Like, okay, yes, that's kind of true, but also I thought I don't believe that Bob the drag queen would be the only person who was going to say that at some point. Like this,
Right.
anytime there's a in the traitors, there's a death row or a players go to the dungeon or the three players come back and they're suspended in cages, it always immediately creates a bit of suspicion on those people. So I don't buy that Bob the drag queen is the only player who said that or was going to say that. So that
Yeah. I think that was Rob's
it's
excuse.
an excuse, yeah.
Maybe he even convinced himself of that. I think that other people, including Bob H., hit the nail on the head when he said Bob wanted to come in there. Well, or who was it that said it this time? Put his dick on the table. Basically just he he didn't like that Bob was out front and taking control and everything else.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that's not, he's not used to playing second fiddle.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, uh, whether he would ever admit that, that's another issue. But um, anyway, there is a preview, which I know you probably don't get to see, but that's okay because it's
Yeah.
not at all helpful.
Okay.
It's literally just Alan talking about like the next murder and that it'll be face to face.
Okay.
So we have some listener questions. Um, I have one. I know that you have a couple as well.
Yeah.
I'll start with mine. It's my friend Jason, who co hosted an episode of Canada with me a while back. And he actually wrote this to me while we were recording the last episode, hoping to get it in before that, but he just missed. But it's still somewhat appropriate because he wonders if recruitment is a huge temptation for the traders on US. He said the opening traders didn't choose each other to be in a nominal alliance, and he thinks they all really want to recruit someone else. Danielle outright said it, and he thinks maybe the other three have considered it. And this informed their games to be a bit more messy and willing to toss each other under the bus without
Mm.
regard for the potential blowback on them. I didn't think so last episode and think so less this episode. I heard from Jason again after he watched this episode this morning, and he said that this actually two choices: either one, they're just really bad, or two, this is what they're doing. I don't think that's what they're doing. I do think Danielle was thinking that way. I mean, she flat out said it.
Yeah.
I don't think the other two would. For sure, I don't think Carolyn is. I don't think Carolyn thinks that way.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think Rob would think that way either. It's possible that he thought if he could get rid of all of them and then recruit his own, he could control them like he did on his season of Survivor that he won, where he controlled everyone. But I I just don't think they're really considering that aspect of it, except like I said, Danielle in her overly complicated plan.
Yeah. That's my instinctive response as well. That I can't see Carolyn thinking that far ahead or planning all that. I mean, I know she was frustrated with the other traitors because
Right.
they weren't listening to her, but I don't think her immediate response to that was, well, I'll just get rid of you and get some new ones in. Yeah, we heard Danielle planning that
Yeah.
she was going to mastermind all of that. Rob, who knows? We again, yeah, we've not seen it in the edit. We've not seen
Right.
him. I wouldn't be surprised if now
Yeah.
he's like, these two, I can't go on like this.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe now he's sort of gonna start thinking, I need to get them out and get one of the guys on board,
Right.
and I'll help them stop my name from going around. So maybe that's his next step.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. You said you had a couple.
Yes, I have a question from Alyssa for the second time on Spotify because Alyssa sent in a question before. I think actually for the yeah it was for Traitors US. See, I'm mixing up Traitors UK, Traitors US. It's
Yes.
too much.
Yeah.
But it was. Alyssa had sent a question in about your thoughts on Dylan as a player. So Alyssa's commented again, said, "Yay, they answered my question." Thanks, Matthew and David. Great episode as always. Do you have any winner predictions at this point? If we all think that Carolyn will become a casualty of Danielle's bad game moves, who might win instead? Maybe a recruited traitor? Could be anyone? Could the Faithfuls win again? Maybe Carolyn can't fight her way out of this, but I think it's an uphill battle. It's funny that Alyssa's picking out Carolyn as the sort of weak one who's going to become a casualty. I actually don't think that.
I think they're all at this point. I think they're all going to become casualties.
It's- so do I. I think
Yeah.
Carolyn will may be the last one standing, but
Right.
yeah, my predictions for a winner. Uh, I'm gonna maybe this is the easy option. I don't think it will be any of the three traitors we have now, but I could see it being a recruited. They're going to have to recruit at some point, so that tends to be a good position to be in. So
Right.
I'll just go with it, sort of kind of statistically, or yeah, I'll go with a traitor recruit who I I'll go with one of the guys.
I'm
One
gonna.
of,
I mean, I'm following closely there. If I had to be pinned down to pick one, I think Dylan maybe.
yeah, that could be interesting. Yeah, as a recruited traitor.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, my worry is that he does a Pete and gets offered it, and is like, no, no, I'm a faithful through and through. I couldn't
Oh no,
possibly.
he's not like that. He's a
Okay,
gamer. I
okay,
think he's
good.
shown that he watches these games, he plays these games, or he wants to play these
Yeah,
games. So I think
okay,
he'll definitely accept it.
that would be smart. Okay.
Yeah.
We also have a question from Helen on Instagram, and I think we've come across this conundrum at some point in the podcast, but it's sort of coincidentally fits maybe this season and these episodes really well. Helen asks, what happens if the traitors can't agree who to murder? I've never seen this happen, but surely it must do sometimes. Are they given a time limit behind the scenes? Or are they just so tired that they want to make a quick decision so they can get to bed? Would love to hear your thoughts. Um, yeah, I, I mean, if it really is like stalemate and like this, they're arguing with one another and
Hmm.
they just cannot. It, really, the producer, the crew will just step in. The team will just step in and say, "You are going to have to pick someone, or we are not stopping filming.
Right.
It's up to you how long this goes. Hurry up and make a decision. Just do it." I mean, production might even suggest to them, "Look, if you can't agree, you're going to have to come up with a random method, like someone holds a number behind their back, and it's
Yeah.
one of you just pick. Either way, hurry up and do it." So
Yeah. I think I know that we have discussed it at some point on the podcast. I couldn't tell you what season, what country, even. But yeah, exactly that. I think at some point they're just like, okay, look, it's the middle of the night because we know. I mean, or at least we see allegedly they all go to bed at midnight. Is it real midnight or do they, send them at 10 o'clock and just set the clock to midnight? But whatever time it is, it's late. We've
it's very
heard from
late. Yeah,
traders before that it's late.
yeah,
And so if you wake up the next morning and you've got huge bags under your eyes and you can't function because you were up arguing all night, well, that's not good for you. So at some point, and I suspect, that's part of the reason for Carolyn rolling over a couple of times is because she's just been like, fine, I'm done. I don't want to fight, you
yeah,
know? So I think that's what they get to the point of, well, we're going to keep this going until you guys make a decision.
yeah. And I think
Um,
when you've got three or more people, someone is going to cave eventually.
right,
I don't think you'd ever get three people so stubborn that none of them will change their mind.
right.
I wonder if maybe this came up before is I'm thinking to Traitors Australia season 2, and they're sort of similarly, we ended up with a couple of traitors who did argue on more than one occasion, and it got really heated. And they both came into the turret like convinced about what they wanted to happen, but one of them always caved, usually after not actually that long. So
Well, that we
someone
saw.
will always give in.
Not, yeah. I feel like it was more recent than Australia season two, but it's possible.
Yeah.
So,
I have no more listener questions for now. I have a couple of predictions. I have a couple of final thoughts. I don't know if you have
okay.
the same.
Yes, yeah. If you have final thoughts, and then I have a lot of final thoughts before we get predictions. So.
My should I? I'll start with my predictions. I'm just playing it safe. I'm just going to predict Rob's had it next time. He's not going to last much longer. I'll just go with Rob. Um,
Okay.
and for murder, uh, I think. Well, it can't be someone. It's probably not going to be someone who was in the group with Danielle and Carolyn in the task because they had the shield and they've agreed to do the sort of group
Mm.
immunity. I can't remember who was in what group, but I'll go for maybe the obvious. Maybe it's not the obvious. I think Derek's going to get murdered, and I wonder if that's why they showed us in the edit him telling his theory about Brittany to Dylan and saying, "I think Brittany's also a traitor." And that's going to have some consequence because I just wonder maybe Derek's going to be murdered next morning. Dylan's going to go, oh, he picked out Brittany right before he left, and he told me and me alone. and he's going to have some false theory about that. So, and I also think Carolyn and Danielle wouldn't object to Derek because they don't care. They don't care about Rob. They're not going to agree on anything. They're just gunning for one another. So,
I mean,
um,
Danielle, I still
yeah.
think Danielle would object because I think that she
Oh,
feels
she gets on with him or something.
she
She's got
gets, yeah,
some,
she knows him. And
yeah.
also he's going hard after Rob, so I think she'd object to that. Also, they have no clue who has the shield on that side.
Oh, so he's part of that as
He's part of
well.
the
Okay,
group that
okay,
didn't have a traitor in it. I believe. I believe. I can't remember exactly what group Rob was in, but I'm pretty sure he wasn't in that one.
okay.
Um, I was thinking that despite what Danielle said, they'll just murder Ivar because none
Yeah.
of them are close to him. All he does is make tea, and he's the easiest. And they know he doesn't have a shield. I mean, they could try to play it off as random because nobody supposedly knew, but also it would be beneficial if Carolyn is thinking this way to be like,
Hmm.
see, told you Danielle was a traitor.
Yeah,
She knew that I had the shield.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and she couldn't get me because I had the shield, and she knew that.
Hmm.
Um, so, yeah. As for banishment, if Rob and Carolyn really do join forces against Danielle, I think it'll be tough for her to get out of. Carolyn did plant the seeds this week, but of course, a lot of seeds were planted against Rob. Um, I think it's got to be either Rob or Danielle. I will be shocked and amazed if Rob makes it through again.
Hmm.
But if he does, it'll be Danielle. But I think it'll be Rob,
Okay.
finally.
Uh,
Uh,
my final thoughts, I guess, are the. I said this to you before we recorded. I feel like this season has become an example of something that I haven't seen to this extent in other seasons. That it's no longer about faithful versus traitors. It's just about traitors versus traitors.
yes,
It's like the faithful have become irrelevant in this season. The traitors have just disintegrated so fast. And yeah, we've had pockets of it, and of course we always have traitors who turn on traitors and they
right.
vote one another out. But this level of all three of them just coming at one another, this level of breakdown and fractiousness, you know, from like maybe 3 episodes in, it's what, and again, it's very entertaining,
Right.
but it's wild. So that that's those are my final
Yeah.
thoughts. I was, at the end of this episode, I was actually also desperate to watch. I don't know if they're on Peacock but they're on YouTube that they do the traitors revealed,
Right.
and we see the banished player and the murder finding out who were the traitors.
Hmm.
I actually immediately went to YouTube after this. I thought, oh, I want to see the reactions, but it wasn't available yet. So I'm annoyed. It seems to not become available because last week's one only became available 3 days ago. So they seem to sort of delay it a little bit,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is very frustrating. But I am very keen to see Wes finding out that, of course, Rob is a traitor.
Right. So, yeah. Speaking of Wes, his big mouth got him in trouble on another reality show. He lost House of Villains because of it, and now he lost the Traitors because of it.
Mm,
Um, and the thing is, if I were a player this season, I would not have cared if he were a traitor or faithful.
yeah,
We have talked at great length about the actual goal of the game. And the thing is, if you have someone like a West there, he's going to try to control it. And that means, unless you are super close to him, you probably won't end up winning no matter what.
yeah,
So, especially once he started lobbing threats, I don't care if he's a traitor, he has to go. Um, and it's funny watching him here because I went through a similar cycle with Wes as I did when watching him on House of Villains just a little while ago. At first, I liked him despite what I'd seen of him in the past. He seemed to be playing well and getting along with people. And then all of a sudden, he went into a kind of dickhead mode where he just couldn't help himself. And then, boom, that was it. Um, Even in just this episode, he was 100% right in his theory of what Rob did. But getting the facts right doesn't matter if you get the whole social aspect of the game wrong.
yeah.
I think I've seen him on one season of the challenge, and it wasn't even a real season of the challenge. Rather, it was what they called the Challenge USA. It was on for 2 seasons. It featured previous Survivor, Big Brother, Amazing Race, I think Love Island players. Um, but then the second season, they brought in some of the regular challenge players as well, and he was one of them. And I remember him getting in someone's face, and I made a video about it, and people commented that, yeah, that's the way he acts and part of how he wins. And I was like, through intimidation. And I was like, oh, okay. But that doesn't work here. And just in case anyone's listening and has watched a lot more of the challenge than I have, if I'm getting it wrong, I'm sorry in advance. Feel free to message us and say, no, David, here's where you got it wrong. But that's my impression. Now, I did not watch this episode, quote unquote, live because there was an Illinois basketball game on, which they lost. And I wish I hadn't watched. But that aside, after I did watch, I posted my thoughts about Wes on Blue Sky at around midnight my time. And I was surprised when several people staunchly defended him. I realized then that they had already been having this debate for a few hours, and I accidentally stepped right into the middle of it because I wasn't caught up because I was avoiding spoilers, so I was not. But to everyone who was defending him on Blue Sky, sorry, no. You may love him on the challenge, but he's 0 for 2 on recent shows for essentially the same reason. And he didn't learn. I mean, I wasn't sure which show recorded first. I thought it was the Traitors and then House of Villains, but someone I know said that she looked on Reddit and it was the opposite. Either way, literally, you can't tell that he gained any knowledge from one or the other because he was the same way. As for Rob, or rather, as for the Traitors, Rob was right. This is really a dysfunctional bunch. But Rob is not himself blameless for it. He had a knee-jerk reaction to what Bob the Drag Queen said, which, again, I think was in large part because he also wanted to have more control and Bob was interfering in that. However, I do think Danielle is the bigger cause, which I've been saying since the start. She got it in her head that she couldn't work with Carolyn and then made it so she couldn't work with Carolyn. The funny thing is that if she had just tried working with Carolyn, I bet they could have gotten Rob out this week.
Yeah.
I noted several times that Danielle got in trouble for stuff she'd said the day before. And then I rewatched the initial Traitors turret scene as I was making a video short. And what Danielle said to Carolyn was, I'll make it right tomorrow. And then she even repeated it. She didn't just say she'll stop. She said she would make it right. Yet we saw absolutely no indication that she took any action to do that. Now, we could say that's not necessarily surprising because it's hard to turn around a day later and say, hey, remember how I told you Carolyn said your name? I totally misunderstood. Yeah, she said she liked the chutney, not I want to go after Brittany. But still, it's understandable why Carolyn would be so upset. It wasn't like Danielle just said, I will stop going after you. She said, I'll make it right. She didn't make it right. She did literally nothing to make it right as far as we know.
Yeah. She did the opposite. She just sort of dug in and...
Right.
I know she didn't vote for Carolyn this time, but she just sort of actually seemed quite unremorseful about it all as time went on. So, yeah. I everything you're saying about Wes makes sense. And I'm contradicting myself a little bit earlier. When I was watching the roundtable, I was mad that they banished Wes purely because I wanted Rob to get caught and I wanted to see the reaction. I wanted them to get it right. And I thought that they were picking bad reasons to think that Wes was a traitor. But I do also completely agree. If you somehow end up with him at the end of the game, you couldn't trust that player. Like there's no way you'd want to be in the game with him. So I guess at some point you might as well get rid of him if you can.
Yeah. And it's like he couldn't help himself. Someone asked me again on Blue Sky, is he like this? Is it a shtick or is he really like this? And my response to them was, I think it's a combination of both.
Yeah.
And that he puts on this, he even said, you win these games by being aggressive. but he was doing well up till this point. The first 5 episodes, he had kept it in check until he got called out at the round table. And what really set him off was the whole thing of Chriselle saying, you've been aggressive. I don't like the way you've been acting. And then he just could not help himself.
Yeah.
He had to make the comments. And no, that part was not shtick. That was him. That I think was under pressure, his true personality, his game personality coming out. And I think under normal circumstances, he's probably a really nice and friendly guy. And I saw some stuff on social media. There was some sort of special screening of the show, and I think that Carolyn was there. He was there. I couldn't tell who else was there, but there were some interviews on social media. I think it was on Carolyn's stories on Instagram, and I think Alan was there, but it could have been someone pretending to be Alan. The camera was not close up enough, and so he said something like, yeah, I'm fine. I know I've talked about how I've won a lot of these games. And then Alan, or the Alan impersonator, said, yes, we've heard you mention, and which makes me think it was Alan. And then he said, but I've also lost a lot more than anyone else, just, by nature. So I'm used to it. I'm fine. But I do think under normal circumstances, yeah, he's probably a pretty nice guy, probably a fun guy, until you set him off.
Yeah, until I mean, there's definitely a lot of ego there. So it seemed
Yes.
like his ego as a player was hit, and he just couldn't deal with it.
Right. So, all right. Well, we still have to end our Trade Our Trader game. But before we do, we want to mention where you can find us. Now, personally, I'm all over social media and reality TV podcasting. Of course, I'll continue being right here with you on the Tradar for the rest of the season, as we mentioned at the top of the show. And we just did a Traders UK season wrap up podcast as well. So everyone should make sure to watch or listen to that one. Beginning next month, and I say next month as if it's so far away when, as we're recording, it's literally tomorrow. But I will be back podcasting about U.S. Survivor on the Rob Has a Podcast Network, with the name of the show being Why Blank Lost. I was a little surprised. The cast of Survivor 48 came out of nowhere. I expected it maybe in another week, maybe longer than that. I mean, the spoiler people have had the cast for a long time, but the official cast release. And so that means that me and my co-host for that show will be doing a cast preview podcast probably a week before the show starts. So in a couple weeks. But throughout all that time, I will be posting at least 2, often 3 or more reality TV short videos every day on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram as at David Bloomberg TV. Right now, they're a mix of course, Traitors US, Beast Games, Deal or No Deal Island, and Survivor flashbacks to older seasons. I mentioned on one of our Traitors UK podcasts last week, but forgot to mention here, that I surpassed 45,000 subscribers on YouTube. And so keep chugging along, hoping for 50. I'm looking for 50. And so anyone, want to join in on that, please come over and subscribe. And then you can, of course, also find me on Blue Sky as at David Bloomberg. I encourage anyone at any of the other places to come over there. I just went over 4,000 followers on Blue Sky. And, to find all my accounts, you can go to Linktree/David Bloomberg with a dot before the EE in the URL. Matthew, where can people find you and this podcast on social media?
You can follow on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at the Trade Hour Podcast. And my aspirations for YouTube followers are far more modest than David's, so I'm just looking to get to 1,000 at this point. And now I'm only about 100 away, which is
All
really
right.
exciting. And of course, whatever platform you're using to listen to or watch, it'd be great if you can subscribe, follow, leave a nice review. You can leave comments on all these different places as well, on Instagram and YouTube. And you can even email me at thetradarpodcast@gmail.com, or you can leave a voice message that we can play on the podcast at memo.fm/thetradarpodcast. I thought the US listeners would be much more confident about this than us quiet, reserved, timid Brits. We had lots of voice memos on the UK version, so someone sent us a voice message. And a couple of final things. You could visit the coffee.com page for the podcast if you felt like donating a little one-off contribution to help the running. So this week, thank you to Daniel. And when I saw the email saying Daniel, someone has supported you, Daniel, I thought, oh, it's Danielle. She's listening, but it was Daniel, not Danielle. And Susan from Cumbria. I'm going to mention Susan twice because she's from. I guess maybe Susan's not listening to this, but maybe she's watching US as well. So I'll say thank you, Susan, now, and I will also thank Susan on the next. Well, there's not really a next UK podcast, but well, there kind of is because actually, as well as the episode that David has just mentioned, or sort of listener Q&A season summary, there will be a special, probably within 24 hours of this episode, a special psychology episode. So I'm being joined by a research scientist called Suzanne Zedek to talk about the relational dynamics and human interactions on the Traitors. I've got lots of questions about the psychology of the game, the mental processes the players go through, and I've had some listener questions that I'm going to put to Suzanne. We will be referring heavily to the most recent series of Traitors UK, because Suzanne is here in the UK and is a big fan of the show and has also just finished the most recent season. So heads up, we'll be referencing specific players and events from UK Series 3. Maybe we'll talk about the outcome. But if you've seen that season or you don't really mind spoilers, it's going to be a great episode. So I would definitely tune into that. Uh, and I guess speaking of psychological games, we can wrap up the Trade Our Traitor.
Yes, yes. So, Matthew, did you lie to me?
I did lie to you. Yes.
Damn it. I was
Haha.
hoping you hadn't because I literally have nothing. But I did lie to you as well. Um, crap. I literally have nothing. So I'm just going to throw something out there because I have nothing. And I'm going to say that it wasn't someone named Daniel that donated to the coffee page. It was someone named Danielle, but of course, not the Danielle that we think, because let's face it, I have not been complimentary towards Danielle on this podcast. So I don't think she'd be donating yet. So was it not Daniel?
That that was my lie. I'm so mad at you. David. I made that up. No one called Daniel to donate. Jeez. Oh, I thought it was so crafty. I thought, I did it right at the last minute. He's never gonna know. Yeah, it's Suzanne from Cumbria, or sorry, Susan from Cumbria did donate. I made up Danielle or Daniel. That was a lie.
That is, I'm going to say this about myself. That is amazing. I am so happy. That is hilarious.
I was really pleased when you said, "Oh, I've got no idea." I thought, "Yes, I've got him," and then you pluck it right out of the air. Great. Can you see the reflection in my eyes of the? Because when I write down the lie in my notes, I highlight it in red to remind myself you need to include that. Maybe you can see the red highlight reflection. I don't know, or maybe you're just good at this game. Uh, right now, I need to catch. I need to get you now. I've got lots of options
Mm.
because I'm a suspicious person and I think everything you say is a lie. Um,
And because I may throw things in there.
well, yes, you did a lot of throwing in little stories. Uh, I wondered if now this would be really amazing. We talked at the start. You thought maybe I was lying about my tea, and I
Mm.
showed you it was tea, and then you quickly went, "I'm drinking chocolate." I thought that could be really risky. You're just hoping that I'm not going to ask you to prove it to me and show me what you were drinking. So it could be that. Um, could have been, it really could have been something about the mission because I'm not saying I don't pay attention to the missions, but I pay less attention to the missions. So when you were going over the questions that they had to answer to unlock the crates, I thought you could have made one of those. I don't remember the exact
I've heard even
questions.
sometimes you get up and leave and go to the bathroom during the missions and then lie about it.
Yes, but then I always rewatch and pay
Okay.
particular attention. And you talked about someone, Lee Jason sent you. an email last time while we were recording. That could have been a lie. You mentioned basketball. You said Illinois lost the game. I'm not watching basketball, and this, I don't know. What? Maybe they won. I don't know. Maybe there is no basketball. But I'm going to go for you talked about your Survivor poster and that Rob was a character on it, and you talked about his cap. And of course, I can't see your real background today, so I don't know. I can't see your poster that I can normally see. So I think that's your lie.
Well, let me reach over here, and I have another version of the poster. This used to hang in my office. Of course, with the background, you can't actually see it. So that doesn't really work so well. Okay, that was not well thought out. Let's see. There he is. Oh, look, it's
Oh,
Rob. You
oh,
saw
it's
him coming.
Rob,
There he is.
and his cap's the right way.
And his cap's the right way. You
He's got
can't see the
immunity
whole roll.
idol.
Yeah, you can't see the whole rule. Sorry, it's being reflected. Oh, look, I'm invisible. Ooh. I did not test this on the green screen background there. I guess I could turn it off temporarily just to show you. I think I can. Can I? All
Probably.
right. I'm not going to worry about that right now. But no, that was not the lie, is what I'm trying to say.
Did
But
you
I did
deliberately
think
include that to make me think it was the lie?
I did not initially, but I thought, oh, this will be good because he'll probably think it's a lie.
That
But I just
counts!
happened to notice
Yay!
it. Yeah. Um, but just happened to notice it. I was like, oh yeah, she's pretending. Oh wait, that's Rob. Hey. Oh, yes. So no, that was not the lie. The lie was near the end. I said some people on Blue Sky were defending Wes. I have not seen a single person on Blue Sky defending Wes. Admittedly, it's possible, and I just haven't witnessed it. But it sure didn't happen last night in terms of anyone replying to me.
Uh,
People were, pretty much on board with Wes shooting himself in the foot.
okay.
One person did just this morning, just before we started to record. I almost didn't read it just in case they did defend it and I'd had to change things, but did say something like, yeah, he's always been like that. It's not a shtick, but it really didn't. It wasn't really defending him, just explaining. It wasn't even a reply to me. It was a reply to the person who asked me that same question that I mentioned.
Yeah. Well, I believe that completely because people are wild on social
Oh yeah,
media and
they'll defend anyone. Yeah, I mean that's why it was so believable for that.
yeah, like one of our listeners thinks that Danielle is one of the greatest traitors there's ever been. So, hey, there's all sorts of opinions going around.
Yes.
So,
Um,
I I didn't even register as a possible. So, well done.
yeah.
You tricked
Thank
me.
you.
You
Thank you.
betrayed me. You got me good.
Woohoo! So with that, we will be back next week for the Traitors US episode 7. As I mentioned, I hope everyone has listened or will listen to the Traitors UK season wrap up. And until then, so I hope everyone tunes in and feel free to reach out through social media to both of us in the meantime. And remember, everyone, stay traitorous.
And keep us on your radar.